They're coming. They're coming your way. They'll be here soon. Will you be ready?
This is the sound you hear when something's gone wrong. It's the sound all of us heard when the clouds were gray and the rain starts pouring heavily. Sometimes it's the sound we hear before we're told that someone's gone missing, or perhaps someday it'll be the sound we hear before the nukes drop. As scary as that scenario is, the EAS, or the Emergency Alert System, was built to warn us of either ongoing situations or emergencies that were going to occur. When I was a kid, I usually hear the EAS go off when I skipped school. See, back in the 90s and early 2000s, not a lot of people stayed home. Usually those who stayed home were kids ditching school, people who got injured at work, or house moms with nothing better to do. Obviously, this meant that this was the perfect time to test the EAS, and boy, did that ever make me regret skipping school. Why exactly did it even make that sound? What was the deal behind it? Well, interestingly enough, that horrible screech at the beginning of the alert is apparently digitized code called the digital header, and it's meant to communicate with the system what kind of threat they're in, what area it's affecting, and just how long the threat will last. The digital header is repeated 3 times in order for the system to catch any mistakes it might have made. The source of these broadcasts all come from different sources, yet once these sources find a reason to display a message and warn the people, it automates a message to that area affected. So, for example, one such source could be from the National Weather Service, and they suddenly find a tornado somewhere in, I don't know, North Carolina, Wake County. The system will then automate a message telling the EAS to make the message, then the EAS then screeches 3 times to make sure that the message is right, and well, basically, it just works the same way dial-up internet used to work back in the day, you know, when that was a thing. It's communicating back and forth between the source and the area. It's bad enough that I'm scared of tornadoes, but now I gotta listen to this banshee-like screech from a computer. And keep in mind, this sound is supposed to keep us safe and aware. Yeah, I'm aware alright, aware of the stains on my fucking underwear, asshole. Now, of course, as horrifying as that sound is, nothing can compare to local access alerts, which is something a lot like emergency alert systems, only it was more local and was dealt with local authorities and anybody else who was currently in the position of power to alert the community. Local alert systems were soon replaced by emergency alert systems, but man, I feel for anybody who actually heard the local alert systems, because these seem way more terrifying.
This is the 18th Wing Command Post. As of 1500 local, the 18th Wing Commander has declared tropical conditions storm watch for Okinawa.
Wow. Satan, is that you? You gotta keep in mind that even though the emergency alert system came out in 1997, local access alerts still helped everyone else that weren't affected by emergency alert systems. It didn't all come in at once. It had to be rolled out slowly, one by one in each city, and of course major cities had them first, as opposed to much smaller rural areas. But again, this sound worked largely in the same way emergency alert systems work. They're digital headers that told you info and communicated with the entire community what they needed to do in case of the emergency. Honestly, as fascinating as the digital header itself is, that never really stopped me from fearing what message the creepy voice had to say. It's always either a very muffled up man from nowhere telling you how you'll be dying this evening, or some robot with little to no empathy or remorse about however you're going to die. Pick your poison. Nowadays, I seldom ever hear this message on TV anymore, especially since, I don't really pay for TV. I think most of us don't. Although I still hear it, just on my cell phone. It's pretty much for the same reasons too. Bad weather, child gone missing, some other horrible disaster, and Jesus Christ, do kids go missing in North Carolina? Can I just mention that real quick? Like, while I was living there with my parents, oh god, as soon as I got my cell phone, that thing went off like every night about some other child going missing. What is with you people? What, is there a kids sale for Food Lion or something? Like, what? Though it's not just to warn you of weather or missing kids, but it can also warn you of other disasters as well, though they're not as frequent. So I wouldn't worry about this sound being the last thing you hear anytime soon, though accidents can happen. As was shown in Hawaii one January morning in 2018, somehow the person who was supposed to test the emergency alert system accidentally clicked on the warn everyone that they're about to die from nuclear arms button. You know, a common mistake. Though it doesn't have to be an accidental thing, sometimes the EAS can just go off for fun, like that one time someone hacked into the EAS and warned everyone that there was a zombie invasion.
Civil authorities in your area have reported that the bodies of the dead are rising from their graves and attacking the living. Follow the messages on screen that will be updated as information becomes available. Do not attempt to approach or apprehend these bodies as they are considered extremely dangerous.
Boy, I'd feel bad for any snot-nosed brat that skipped school that day. Probably thought that shit was real. But hey, let's not forget, America isn't the only country in the world shitting their pants over this shit. All across the globe, people hear different types of screeching noises from their own personal emergency alert system. Whether or not they work similarly to America's is really unknown to me, but if I had to hazard a guess, probably. Either way, they're just as scary, if not worse, than America's EAS. Let's take a listen to a few of them, shall we?
Hello, John Sluter again from the Bureau with the latest situation on... On toggle.
Do not be alarmed. You have just heard the important message signal of the public warning system. There are two other signals of the public warning system, namely the alarm and all clear signals. Signal is sounded when the threat is over and you can leave the shelter.
This is the Wartime Broadcasting Service. This country has been attacked with nuclear weapons. Communications have been severely disrupted, and the number of casualties and the extent of the damage are not yet known. We shall bring you further information as soon as possible. Meanwhile, stay tuned to this wavelength, stay calm, and stay in your own house. Remember, there's nothing to be gained by trying to get away. By leaving your homes, you could be exposing yourselves to greater danger. If you leave, you may find yourselves without food, without water, without accommodation, and without protection.
And of course, my absolute favorite one, the Russian EAS that just straight up flashes up and says warning while this horrible noise is just blasting through your TV screen.
2 метра в секунду.
Внимание! Говорит Главное управление МЧС России по Ульяновской области. Проводится техническая проверка системы централизованного оповещения населения.
These are all pretty bad. And I was actually going to end off by showing you Japan's EAS, which I felt was the most relaxing and calmest way to tell you you're gonna die. But then I found out that they have an infinitely scarier one, and yeah, take a listen.
緊急地震速報です。強い揺れに警戒してください。緊急地震速報です。強い揺れに警戒してください。
緊急地震速報です。福島県、宮城県、山形県、
Holy crap. Well, whether it's a zombie apocalypse or someone's kid getting snatched up, one thing's for certain. This sound is among the scariest sounds we'll ever hear. And if I had to argue, it's not just because it sounds scary, but let's face it, the message that it can bring sometimes is twice as scary than whatever sound it can make.